recording, right? Yeah, we're recording the Midweek Howl, the non-paranormal part of the From the Shadows podcast. I feel funny that I got to say that every time, but I think I do.
Why?
So people know what they're getting into. They know we're not going to talk about Bigfoot or wellness.
You don't know that.
Well, okay. So I don't want them tuning in specifically for that. They got to know that. Well, because sometimes people will be disappointed, right? Like
I don't know. You telling me that the people that believe in Sasquatch are so one-dimensional that if it's not, they can't process anymore. They can't enjoy something else. What?
Yeah, some people don't. Some people have a very limited time to listen, and they just want to listen to that stuff. Which leads me. We had a question from a listener, okay. And this listener wanted to know, because we video now the regular paranormal part of the podcast, and he wanted to know why we don't do video of the Midweek Howl.
First of all, because I have a face for radio. Tell him that.
Okay. Well, you just did. You just did tell him we had a face for radio.
I don't have a webcam.
Okay.
Because I'm afraid of government spying.
There you go.
So there you go. I don't want them to be able to infiltrate my house to see what's going on. And
those are valid reasons.
And if people recognize me, they might realize that I was on the Burisma board with Hunter Biden, and they might come after me.
Oh, jeez.
Because I have had jobs that I had no experience in and made a lot of money at. So I don't want them to come after me.
That's sort of like me at the post office, right? I had no experience. And
that's one of the things I always think, well, who's got any experience until you start working there, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much. But so I think those are valid reasons. I think that ought to satisfy.
No, I don't have a webcam. I thought about buying a monitor with a camera in it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I just haven't. I just didn't. Because at the end of the day, how many monitors do you need? I already got a couple of them sitting here. And
besides, I think we're going to do. We were supposed to do it last month, but we did. I think we're going to do for our Patreon members. I think we'll do like a live video thing.
I might do. I got a laptop that's got a camera in it, and I had. For my part-time day job, I did they have all these Zoom meetings because people are from all over the country, you know what I mean? And most of the people I work for are from the East Coast, work with on the team, so to speak. And in the background is if you were in my office looking back from the monitor, you see no less than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sets of antlers, 2 mounted white-tailed deer, a mounted duck, a mounted antelope, and 2 gun safes. And what bothers him is I got these 2 giant gun safes, and in between them, I've got a bunch of guns leaning up against the wall because the safes are so full that I can't even fit them all in there. And that bothers a certain demographic of coworker. So I'm afraid I'll lose viewers or listeners if they realize that. And it's down in the bunker, and they will realize the bunker is for real.
The bunker is for real. Which brings me to, our loyal listeners. Well, we're going to get into we got some big advertisers coming they want to be part of the program. And so one of them is a company, and I won't say their names until we start doing, but they do prepared meals and generators and all kinds of stuff for bunkers, right? For the bunkers. So maybe they'll send some stuff that you can help stock your bunker down there with.
You don't need to stock anything. Just have a willingness to take what's not yours. I have well-equipped neighbors, and the skill sets needed to bolster my supply. Mm-hmm. That's not what we were going to talk about. I don't even remember what we were going to talk about.
No, okay. So I wanted to mention we're doing this on Sunday night. I'm back. You thought I sounded a little tired because you knew we had a big family reunion this weekend. It's our once a year, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. My mom's side of the family, we have it at our farm on the campground, and my parents really go above and beyond and put on a great event for our family. A lot of them come from Indiana because one of my mom's sisters moved from where we're at in Ohio, and they settled in Marion, Indiana. And then that sister had 5 kids, and all those kids have had 2 or 3 kids. And now all those kids, in fact, this weekend was the first time during the family reunion that somebody had a baby. Now, they didn't have the baby at the campground, but they didn't come from Indiana to the family reunion because they had a baby. I think it was Friday night, early.
So if you're from Indiana and you have your baby in Ohio, is it a citizen?
Is it a Buckeye?
I don't know. Is that how it works?
I don't know. Is there's no citizenship to a state, right?
I don't know. I follow some people on Twitter that think Ohio's not a real place.
Really? What's the rationale for not thinking Ohio's?
It's just a figment of people's imagination, like a part of the Matrix.
Part of the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it feels that way. But I will say, so the family reunion is great. I got a really great family. I mean, it's like every other family. There's some stragglers behind in the gene pool or something, But my oldest daughter came up from South Carolina and brought my granddaughter. So I got to hang out with my granddaughters for 2 or 3 days. They stayed in our camper and stuff. And the little girls loved it. Hannah, my daughter, she's a trooper. She's, her husband had to stay back home. He couldn't make it, but I think she's probably pretty wore out. But it's fun. I think it was fun for her. She hadn't been back since she was at the very first family reunion and then went off to college. And she has stayed down in the South, so she has not been able to make it back until she came back in 2020. And of course, it was COVID, so we didn't really have the reunion. So this is the first time back. A lot of the cousins and stuff had not seen her since she was 18. So 15.
Now she's married with children
married with children. Like they hadn't seen her in 15 or 16 years. It'd been that long since they hadn't seen her, and so a lot of my older cousins who are older than me really enjoyed seeing her, and of course the grandkids. And but I did come away with 2 interesting stories from this family reunion. Stories that my cousins told that I've never heard. Okay, do you want to hear?
I'm sitting down.
Do you want to hear I'll let you pick which one. The Jerry.
I want to hear both.
Okay, I'll give the Jerry Reed story. It's kind of short but comical. So I have a cousin who is into racehorses, and which is neither here nor there, but that's a common bond we have with my parents because we all got racehorses. And he is an over the road truck driver.
Well, sure, like most horse racers ought to be.
So I was talking to him and his wife, and she started off the conversation. They were asking me about some country music stuff, and they asked me about the stuff coming up with Wade Jennings because they enjoy Wade Jennings music. And she said, when we got married, she said, I forget where they were getting married, in Colorado or somewhere. And she goes, we pulled up to the venue, and then the hotel next door was Waylon Jennings' tour bus. And she goes, I looked at Mark, my cousin, said, honey, you better hope he ain't playing while we're supposed to be getting married, because we ain't getting married if he is. And so it turned out, they got to get married and then go watch Waylon, which is great. So then Mark says, well, you know who Jerry Reed is? And I go, yeah, I know who Jerry Reed is. Of course, she got the gold line, I got the shaft. I mean, that's great. Yeah. And so he says, he goes, so I'm an over the road truck driver. And he goes, this is back long before I married her. And he said that, and I don't know the guys, I didn't understand what he was saying, but another guy who was a real, like what you'd picture, a real truck driver, big old guy, real, just a big greasy guy. Greasy truck driver.
What do you mean, greasy truck driver? I mean, don't step on your toes there, man.
I'm just saying. He said this is the 70s, maybe early.
Oh, okay. He's trying. Okay, yeah. Okay.
So we're talking about, this isn't a modern truck driver. This is a guy who really is driving the truck. And
Pakistani.
No, not a pack. Come on. Anyway, so they're driving down the highway, and they drive by and they see Jerry Reed's tour bus parked in a hotel parking lot. And the other guy goes, oh my God, it's Jerry Reed. We're pulling in there. I got to go meet him. And my cousin's like, oh, okay, like we're just going to pull in there and whatever. And he said before he can even get his truck in the parking lot, this other guy's already in the parking lot and jumped out of his rig and run up to Jerry Reed's tour bus, didn't knock, just rips open the door and runs up on into the bus. And my cousin says, he goes, I pull in and I get parked. And he goes, before I can even get my feet on the ground, that tour bus door comes flying open. He goes, and my buddy comes flying out of the tour bus into the parking lot. And on the back end of that, his rear end coming out is Jerry Reed with a boot up in the air yelling, get off my tour bus. Get off my tour bus. And he slammed it. So Jerry Reed himself kicked him off the bus, boot and all. And he said, my buddy gets up and dusts himself off. And he goes, can you believe it? I got to meet Jerry Reed.
Well, what else would you say?
I don't know. But I thought that's just fantastic that guy didn't even just wanted to meet Jerry Reed so bad he didn't even mind if it was on the.
And he did. Yeah.
On the bad end. And he's got a great story out of it. So the other story that I heard, and I did not, because my uncle, who's the oldest Huntsberger living, 91, did not make it to the reunion for various reasons that are kind of a sore subject. But anyway, hopefully he'll be back for the next one. But anyways, he's quite a character.
Tiny, dude.
No, that's the problem.
Don't you think you just went and got him?
Well, other parts of his immediate family decided to schedule a fishing trip to Canada of the week of the family reunion.
Did he make it?
And he went on the fishing trip because I
got a Canadian fishing trip. It ain't my story, but I'll tell you one. Circle me back to that. After
I will. So this uncle of mine is great. I mean, he's the connection to all the old stories. He was a Korean vet. Served in Korea. Was actually, I don't know if did I ever tell the story on where he the general came to their camp, where they were set up or whatever, and was so impressed with my uncle that he said, look, I'm taking you with me. You're going to be my driver. You're going to drive my Jeep for me.
I think you had told me that.
And he took off, and like 3 or 4 days later, my uncle's whole unit got wiped out. Did I tell you that? And then
no.
Oh yeah. So he basically took my uncle and made him his driver, made him a military. I mean, I think he became a military policeman.
Most drivers are military policemen.
Okay. So
staff drivers.
So he drives this general then around, and 3 or 4 days later, my uncle said his whole unit got wiped out, just gone. And then he goes, that general basically saved his life. And then he ended up, this general was involved in the peace talks. And I mean, there's pictures of my uncle standing guard outside the peace talks for the Korean War, which that's not so his son, my cousin, is playing this game of all these, which is the truth and which is not. And he's saying all these things, and everything ended up being the truth, even so some of them were kind of crazy. Well, he tells this snippet of my uncle who worked for Worthington Industries, which is still kind of a big deal, but he ran one of the factories here in Ohio for Worthington Industries, was flying, I believe, to Italy on business. And I don't know whether it was on the trip there or on the trip back, but apparently a guy decided he was going to blow the plane up and planted a bomb in the luggage. And he was going to blow the plane up because his mother-in-law was riding on the airplane back to and like I said, I don't know if it was back to Italy or back to the United States. And the mother-in-law was sitting beside my uncle on the plane. And the only thing that stopped the bomb from detonating was the second hand on the clock. As it was going around, a piece of styrofoam somehow fell into the face of the clock and lodged at a point where the clock stopped ticking. And that is the only thing that kept the bomb from going off. Like they said, it was within 5 minutes of blowing up. And I'm like, what? Like, so this had to have happened in the 50s, like 60s, maybe early 70s.
Well, early 70s, you can still carry crazy stuff on planes into the 70s.
Yeah, and I have never heard this story. Like, I've heard a ton of stories. And one of my other cousins confirmed. He goes, yeah. He goes, Uncle Wes told me that story about 10 years ago. And he goes, and I did not, because it's our Uncle Wes. Okay. And, he's like, did this really happen or
He's
not?
The storyteller of the family?
Storyteller. And so my other cousin who confirmed it who heard it 10 years ago, that said, yes, about 6 weeks ago, I was with Uncle Wes and Aunt Nancy, and Aunt Nancy confirmed it that the FBI did in fact come to the house to question our uncle and I think some of the line of the question was, what was your connection to the lady that was riding beside you, the mother-in-law? That was who they, I guess, deducted
the target
was the target
of the assassination.
And he said, I have no connection. I was just riding in the airplane with her. And that's all I got because, of course, my uncle wasn't there. And so now I will see my uncle at some point in the next month because we go to this county fair where he is always at. It's in his town. So I can't wait to follow up this airplane story. And I'm just amazed. Like I've never heard the story. And because I'd like to look it up and see if I can find a historical record of this attempted bombing. That would have to be huge news, wouldn't it?
Maybe. I mean, back in them days, they used to when you start reaching hijackings and things, they used to do a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, like a couple of half a dozen hijackings a year going into the late 70s.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the time of D.B. Cooper and all that. I mean, I've heard of a lot of crazy stories like that. Was it something that they didn't publish? I mean, because there was a lot of hijackings in the 60s.
They had, I'm sure they publicized, but it had a couple. If Cronkite didn't talk about it, it didn't happen.
Well, okay. I guess you're right.
Right? Think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious to get some more information on this and kind of follow up because that's just a crazy story. Just a crazy story.
I read one yesterday that said some little girl got sucked out of a plane that was going 2 miles up. I don't remember, it was takeoff or anyway. She fell through the jungle canopy. It was like in Lima, Peru or someplace and walked out of the jungle a week later.
What? She fell 2 miles down?
That's what it said. I don't know. I started to read the story and yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Well, those kids, wasn't that long ago, those kids in South America survived that plane crash that killed.
Yeah, but I forgot what it made an explosion in the plane and her seat got sucked out. She was still in a seatbelt and her and her seat got sucked out the hole. And I guess the theory is the jungle canopy, she's still alive. There was a redirect to Twitter or to Wikipedia for it. I just thought, do I want to read? I used to read a lot of aviation airplane crash things when I used to fly a lot. And I just, do I want to,
go down that rabbit hole?
Well, I tell you what I was doing. I had to go down to my father-in-law's internment down southeast of the military, the Veteran Cemetery in Bloomfield, Missouri, which is southeast Missouri. And my son was riding with me. My wife was riding with my mother-in-law. Anyway, we were taking multiple vehicles and leaving at different times. And my son said something about taking the scenic route. So I took him down through Salem, Missouri, where I used to go all the time to pick up signs at the Conservation Department sign shop back when I did that line of work. And the family is from a county called Iron County, which is where my grandpa was born. And they migrated. His dad took the kids up, my grandpa and his brothers and sisters up to central Missouri for a job. And anyway, I ended up going down to the family cemetery, one of the two. I couldn't go to the second one because I couldn't get my map to load up because my phone, I was one of the deals, the phone says no service for about 26 miles. Remember you tried to call me there and oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And anyhow, I was down there researching. the cemetery I was at had 45 Crockers in, so it had 45 people that had the same last name as me, and then a half a dozen that had the last name my great grandmother's maiden name. Right, so I'm sitting there so when I finally got service, sitting in bed, I was reading the last couple of nights. I've been researching all these dead relatives down there, and I actually the grandpa, it would be, I guess, my great grandpa's great grandma. Anyway, he died in 1844. He was at the other cemetery, was only 1.5 miles up the road. But I did not know that because my map wouldn't load up. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So apparently, they moved there in the 1820s, the 18 teens to 1820s from Jackson County, Tennessee, and set up home place. And the cemetery I was at was on some ground that belonged to my grandpa's great grandpa. In 1898, they started burying him there on the farm, and it has expanded since then. You follow what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, I got you.
Probably tight asses didn't want to pay to bury him in the other cemetery, so they just decided they'd bury him at home. I don't know. Who knows back in the days? But,
well,
it's very interesting to think how hard those people lived down there at the time. When you start thinking, it's really interesting, at least it is to me, when you're there, with the same place your people have been for, whatever, 200 years, say. Some of them, right? Because they're still there. So 200 years.
And how nobody left and just said, this place sucks. This isn't that great. What did they see? That what keeps everybody what keeps even those few family members there?
I'd say the crooked ass roads for a long time. Did they even have roads?
Well, yeah, I get. Well, you listen. You want to talk about why people settled to where they did? I don't know. We went to Lexington. We went to this place. We took Christy's mother-in-law. She'd been going to this place, or took my mother-in-law, Christy's mother. She collects stuff every year to take to this. It's called the Henderson Settlement. And it is way up in a mountain south of Lexington, Kentucky, about an hour and a half south of Lexington, Kentucky. Why can I not think? I can't think of the name of the closest little town, but it's the town where we stopped and ate at the original Colonel Sanders restaurant. And
right, I remember you telling me that.
So the Colonel Sanders Museum. And sadly, my stomach felt as bad as it does at any other Colonel's. KFC after.
You don't like KFC?
There's certain things that at my advanced age, I cannot digest properly. Let's just leave it that way, that don't set well with me. But that being said, it's great. It's a great place to go see a lot of history on which, if you dig into the Colonel's, how he got started and how he built this little place, and then the highway didn't go by it. He thought the 4-lane was going to go by it, and it went, 10 miles on the other side of the town.
Right.
And then that's what spurred him on to go out and sell his chicken recipe all over the country. And so he ended up making more money franchising out than he would have if he just had that one restaurant by the highway, So it's interesting. A lot of good stuff. But this I think it's Henderson Settlement, is we lost cell signal, like you said, halfway up the mountain. And it is these hills, like I told Christy, I said, you go to Amish country and it's all hilly and curvy and in the woods and stuff here. I said, the Amish are even saying we're not doing this. And it was, I just looked at her and I said, at what point did people decide who weren't driving cars and trucks that this is where I want to settle? Like,
maybe they were tired. Maybe they couldn't go any further.
But there's no farmland up there. There's nothing. It's woods.
Yeah, but at the time, that's probably what they need. In the 1820s, 18 teens, late 1700s. They hunted more than they farmed.
Is that? I was in awe. I was in awe that people settled up there, and there's this little church community. And I guess back in the day, they had these big bunkhouses, and churches used to send kids like work camp. It was like work camp. And so kids would go all summer long and shifts and stay there and go out and work and do stuff in the community. And they said that just doesn't happen anymore. Well, the crazy thing is, so they got this thrift store that helps them, helps fund them.
Oh yeah, I've been in a lot of thrift stores.
Well, so we take this stuff to the thrift store. It's some really nice stuff
that's Christy. I went to 3 thrift stores in Jackson, Wyoming, so I've been in some nice thrift stores. Yeah. So go ahead.
And so we're thinking, okay, all these rundown, ramshackle houses that we've passed along the way, that's who's going to get this stuff. And I'm sitting there in the Suburban after we've already unloaded it, and Christy's using maybe the restroom, and her mom's talking to somebody in there. And I see 3 cars pull up. The one car was a young lady in a $60,000 vehicle with a $200 nail job, gets out of the car to go in and shop at this thrift store.
That's 2 things. Okay, go ahead.
When Christy got in, I said, listen, we're not making this trip because and Christy's like, yeah, the people who really need the stuff aren't able to make it to
the but they resell it and the church takes the money, right? So it's the money.
Yeah, but
using it's not your used underwear in Ohio State shirts.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's got to be part of it, but also some of that clothes has got to go for these people.
No, it doesn't. Don't you see where we send all those hundreds of tons of used good clothes to Africa, and they throw it in a damn river?
Well, it's not. We don't send that stuff to Africa. We send if it's the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Buffalo Bills for the Super Bowl.
Just like, what part of Ohio is this?
This is in Kentucky.
Oh well, Kentucky is like Africa with trees. I don't know. I'm not going to say anything bad about Kentucky because
I'm just saying though, they did say if we send them new stuff that's never been used with tags on it, they will put it together as Christmas stuff for the underprivileged. And I said that is what we need to do rather than now. We did drive down there. We stayed at Cumberland Falls State Park. Cumberland Falls, pretty awesome place to go check out. We did as much hiking as I can do and my mother-in-law could do. Then we went and stayed in Lexington at a really nice B&B and explored Lexington a little bit, drove out through the horse farms, although we didn't get to stop at one. But they got a huge bronze statue of Secretariat in one of the places it's in a traffic circle. So if you want to take a picture of this bronze statue, which of course my mother-in-law wanted to, we had to drive around this traffic circle like Chevy Chase in European Vacation. Hey, look, everybody, Big Ben Parliament. Remember that scene?
I'm just shaking my head at traffic circles. I got mixed emotions about them.
I kind of like
if they're done correctly. They keep talking about they got a bunch of them in Missouri. They're putting more and more in there. I got a friend of mine over MoDOT tells me how great they are. Will they work? And I said, well, not. I can show you half a dozen of them around where I live that are all busted up because they're okay for a small car, but these truck drivers can't get through there because the trailer swings to the inside. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So it's like if you really go to Europe, they're 2 and 3 lanes wide. Okay, ours are 1 lane wide with a whole bunch of crap in the middle, like a thing of Secretariat.
Yeah,
we got flower beds and
drinking fountains,
cultured stone walls and all kinds of shit, dude. We need asphalt to drive on. We don't need all this stuff.
Well, the first traffic circles I ever saw were out on Cape Cod, and they're like 5 lanes. I mean, it's just huge.
Exactly. That's because the Kennedys drive out there. They need that room between the ditches. You get a couple of drinks in you.
Okay, so before we end, let's circle back around to your Canadian fishing story because of our loyal Canadian listeners. They're going to want to hear your Canadian fishing story.
So it's not my story. It's a friend of mine's story. I used to hunt and fish with a lot. He was an engineer. His dad was they come from a long line of professional engineers, very successful, and they were just plumb made up with fishing and duck hunting, right?
Yeah.
And every year his dad and his uncle would take these boys And I think at some point they didn't take all the boys, all the sons at one time. I think they alternated. You know what I mean? Like they took the oldest boys this year and this next oldest boys next year. And like, so my buddy is one of 4 boys, right? Mm-hmm. So they had this great big thing as dad and uncle were getting older that they were going to go take all the boys up there. Or, you know what I mean? I think the oldest 3, the sets of 3. So it was going to be like, it was going to be 2 or 3 brothers and a dad and 2 or 3 brothers and a dad. And I guess they fly them up here in a float plane and drop them off in this, basically they call it a cabin, but it's kind of like a shed, you know, like a tin shack.
Oh, yeah.
There. Yep. And I guess they've got a piece of plywood with the one side painted red. And if there's an emergency, they is supposed to put this plywood up because I guess every day the outfitter flies over all the string of cabins and checks the plywood color. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. See, because there's no other way to get a hold of anybody. So
yes. And I think they were going to be up there like 4 or 5 days. It wasn't a whole week, but it wasn't. Anyway, his uncle had a heart attack and died.
While they're up there?
Yep. And they moped around. They ran out and put the plywood, you know, the red sign up and sat around and waited for the float plane. It never came. Well, after you've sat around with a dead uncle in Canada, you know, this is before cell phones, but no cell phones. So sooner or later, you know, now they're fishing out on the bank, and then they kind of want to go out on the boat, but they got the dead dude, you know, and they don't have a bear box big enough to put him in, right? What do you do with him?
Oh no.
They put him on the roof. So the other one's dad. So it'd be like your brother, you know what I mean? Decide, well, I've got to take control of this because I'm, you know what I mean? I'm the brother here. I'm the adult brother. So they put him on the roof, and about day 2 started fishing. And I think the 3rd day, the plane actually seen it and landing. And he was stiff and all black flied up or whatever. But yeah, they got so bored they didn't eat him. They put him on, you know, it wasn't like that. One of them Peruvian plane crashes.
It was like a weekend of birdies.
Yes. They put him on the roof for the bears and went to fishing.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.